Someone once told me the grass is much greener.
A lot of people are watching along with us.
Things are going to be taken a lot further.
It does keep the flow really, really nicely, which makes it a show that was really ahead of its time.
Where's that petrified eyeball at now? Who's had it last?
Macy is amazing, and she doesn't care about what other people think about her.
Don't you feel like maybe Dodie represents the instinctive animal, ugly part of us?
I might have just been having a bad day when I gave it the meh.
At Camp Caprice, priest, we don't sing mooses, we sing these.
Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side.
Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of We're In Between. The podcast is discussed about every single episode of As Told by Ginger once a week. Last week we discussed about the episode Lunatic Lake alongside with Eric Molinsky, who was one of the storyboard artists on that episode. And this week we have reached the halfway point with discussing about the episode April's Fools. It debuted on April 21st, 2002. The story was done by Emily Kapnick and Vera Duffy, and the teleplay was done by Vera Duffy. In this episode, Ginger decides to play an April Fool's joke on Dodie by forging a love note from the weirdest guy in school. Dodie admits that she really likes the guy, Dustin, and Dustin admits to really liking Macy. In the meantime, Carl fools Blake into thinking he sold his tonsils, but everything goes wrong when he realizes that Joann accidentally threw the tonsil bottle away.
All right, well, we are at the halfway point. Congratulations, Patricia. It has been a long but enjoyable journey so far. I'm very excited about the first half and can't wait to see what's coming in the second half.
Yeah, I guess the perfect way to do to cover the halfway mark is to have another holiday special. This time around, we're going to be having an April Fool's Day episode, which there have only been a handful of Nicktoons that have an April Fool's Day episode. The ones that I can think of on the top of my head are Hey Arnold and Rocko's Modern Life. Cat Dog had a Kooky Prank Day, which is their version of April Fool's Day. Then there's the SpongeBob version. So yeah, there's been a handful of them. So let's see how As Told by Ginger does it. So the episode begins with Ginger, Dodie, and Macy reading A Midsummer Night's Dream. And it's kind of funny because, to go a little bit off topic, my aunt just purchased me the complete works of William Shakespeare for my birthday.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, so while they're doing that, Dodie reminds Ginger and Macy that tomorrow is April Fool's Day, and that Dodie is planning on one-offing the April Fool's Day prank that she did last year, and Ginger is planning on doing the same thing.
Right, so just to start off, have to say I love April Fool's pranks. And if those of you who listen to the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast know, Ashley and I both enjoy pranking our listeners. We did pretend to be the Saturday Night Nick Jr. podcast for a day when on April Fools. And so I'm all about Ginger and Dodie's sort of competitive, try to out-trick each other episode. And let me just say, there are a lot of layers to the pranks on this episode.
Yeah, I also enjoy doing April Fool's Day pranks as well. Just a few years ago, I did a list of the top 10 reasons why modern Nickelodeon was better than classic Nickelodeon. And this was like, not like today in which there are actually some decent shows. I'm talking about like back then when there was like Fanboy and Chum Chum and Breadwinners and stuff like that. And I was talking about like how those shows were amazing and the classics were overrated. And I gotten a lot of hate reactions to it until I actually did post it that this was an April Fool's Day prank.
Oh, so you committed way more than us. I mean, we never explicitly said it was an April Fool's Day prank, but we were pretty obvious.
Oh, geez, I'm looking at Breadwinners. Wow, this looks terrible.
It's even worse when you look at it. Anyway, so continuing on. So Darren climbs through the window, and he learns from Ginger that she's planning on playing an April Fool's Day prank on Dodie. And I just love Darren's suggestion to how to prank Dodie, stuffing her locker full of underwear. But Ginger decides to forge a love letter to the weirdest kid in school named Dustin, who has mismatched sneakers and who's annoying and a spaz. So she writes this love letter while misspelling the word voluptuous. And she puts it into Dodie's locker, and Dodie looks through the locker, and she immediately falls in love. Like, she feels, it's kind of like that episode, once again, going back into, the Doug episode, Secret Admirer, in which Doug thinks that he has a secret admirer when he finds a letter in his locker, and he starts thinking about who's the secret admirer, and he thinks it's Patty, but it ends up being BB. But anyway, so yeah, when Ginger finds out from Dodie that she received the locker, she actually says, guys, I received this letter from Dustin. I never told you guys this, but I've had a big crush on him since forever. And Ginger just falls down, and she is pretty shocked because she didn't think that, Dodie would like Dustin because he's so weird. I mean, the first thing we see from Dustin is that he's eating a sandwich with chopsticks.
Yeah, this is like dramatic irony, the episode, we are in on these pranks that the characters who are being pranked are not in on, and I gotta admit, Patricia, it's a little torturous, especially in this Dodie prank, how, she finds a way to actually fall for him. So we think at the beginning.
And, I want to know your thoughts about Ginger pulling off something like this, because at first it would seem like, when you're pulling off a prank, it's for fun, right? But if it's something involving with love, especially if you're that age in which you want to, you feel like you should, go out with a guy or something if he's really cute, and then you receive a letter saying like, oh, that was a lie. I remember, it's a little bit painful, but I remember receiving a note back in high school from, I have a secret admirer or something, and it just turned out to be a complete lie, and I was kind of heartbroken. Yeah,
no, it's kind of upsetting, and it's a little mean, especially for Ginger. It's a little mean-spirited, because it's essentially making fun of this poor kid, right? I mean, we can assume he'd never find out, but it's kind of unlike Ginger.
Yeah, I felt that this was pretty out of place for Ginger. Like, I mean, if maybe she would have, if maybe it would have been a boy that Dodie didn't like, then maybe it would be a little bit more understandable. But if you're playing like something like love, it's pretty serious. And we'll get to an episode in a couple of weeks in which it involves with Ginger and Dodie and a crush on a guy. So yeah, so I wasn't really too crazy about the fact that Ginger would play off a prank like this. But not to worry, because while Dodie is falling in love with Dustin, and I even love that Macy line in which she says, her body's still here, but her head feels like it's been abducted by aliens. Then we realize that when Dustin approaches the table, he actually has a huge crush on Macy, which is actually pretty shocking because we hadn't seen anybody have a crush on Macy since Hoodsey in the episode Piece of My Heart.
Oh yeah, that is true, isn't it?
Yeah, but, to be fair, Hoodsey was a little bit younger, and at this point in time, we haven't had another episode in which Hoodsey would have another episode with Macy. But yeah, it's actually pretty interesting that we have another middle schooler who actually has a crush on Macy, and he's a really weird guy, and he left a note on Macy's book bag, and he's just like smitten all over her and getting close to her. It's kind of creepy.
No, it is. The whole thing is kind of a mess.
Yeah, so let's go over to the Carlin Hoodsey plot. So,
oh boy.
Okay, so it starts off with Carlin and Hoodsey are thinking about playing a prank on Blake, saying that they sold his tonsils to a witch doctor. And look at that, so the tonsils from the episode Dare I Darren has returned, as I guess I previously mentioned in the episode 1 recap that it was going to come back. So we see Blake, he wants to play a prank on Winston of making a bag of beef jerky and instead putting in like wooden strips so that he can bite into it, and he's actually eating a piece of wood, which, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, for Carl and Hoodsey, it could certainly, it's certainly not extreme for them.
Yeah, it's pretty juvenile. So while Carl and Hoodsey are walkie talking Blake, we see the reaction that Blake is going through when he is told that they sold his tonsils to a witch doctor. We see that his eyes are bugging out. We even see like he had like a little nose drip, and he was sweating, and he was hyperventilating, and he was screaming. And then the next morning when they see him in school, he's like falling apart. He's a complete mess.
Oh man. And we do get a return of Duane. And thank goodness, he is one of my favorite minor characters on the show.
Yeah, Duane was a lot of fun. So the reason why they're seeing Duane is because Joann threw out the tonsils from Hoodsey's drawer that they were hiding in case that Blake were to go over to the to the doghouse to see if maybe they were actually lying. But no. So Joann actually threw it away in the garbage, and Duane is eating a sandwich and telling them, "No, dude, I didn't save those tonsils. I had too much stuff to carry. I thought they were adenoids." And so he tells them how to get over to where he last saw the tonsils, and it's basically like this huge mountain full of maggots and mold and stuff like that. But he tells them to stay away from Vile Valley because the stink will consume you and you will never be seen again. So now Carlin and Hoodsey have to make their way through the dump to try to find Blake's tonsils. And it's going to be really difficult because if you ever visit a dump before, it's pretty big. And it's surrounded by like thousands of pounds of garbage for everything.
Right. And funny story, to the adenoids bit, I got my adenoids and not my tonsils removed when I was a kid, so that line kind of particularly struck me.
Oh, wow. And we even know that Macy had adenoids as well. Miranda would even mention it a handful of times throughout the series, which is probably one of the reasons why she's, she gets a little sick at points, with the congestion and the stuffy nose and stuff.
Right. I think I got strep a lot, and that's why I had to get them out. I really don't remember. But they are gone, and they are not tonsils. Can't really tell you the difference. Oh, and so when they return to Blake empty-handed, Carl lets off this classic line. He goes, "Well, Blake, a funny thing happened on the way to your tonsils," which is, in my view, a two-layered joke. So we have back in the old vaudeville days of the early 1900s, a lot of the, shtick jokes would start with one of the performers saying, "Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the theater," and they would sort of tell this long-winded anecdote. Then we had the Greek Stephen Sondheim musical, "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum," which is a play on that vaudeville joke because ancient Greek people went to forums instead of theaters, that's what it was called. And now Blake is dropping this line. I don't know which he's really referencing, but it cracked me up.
Yeah, it's actually funny because that was one of the very first plays that I ever performed in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a minor role. I was actually one of the main courtesans. So I wasn't like a major role, but I actually still have the script, and I watch the movie every once in a while. And I even still remember some songs from the soundtrack.
Right. So I thought that reference was hilarious and so classic Carl. Of course he would have that knowledge.
Hey, I mean, Hoodsey was referencing a Joni Mitchell song, so why not?
That's true. That is true.
So, yeah, going into Ginger's plot again, it just becomes even worse. So, Dodie thinks that Macy was the one who put the letter in the locker, and so she's not talking to her. And then Macy is being overwhelmed with Dustin, and so she's not talking to anybody. And Ginger is trying to figure out, what should I do? Should I confront them and saying I was the one who did this? But then, it's going to break everybody's feelings. And then when Lois comes along, she even says this really funny story about the one time she played a prank on someone when she filled a bedpan with apple juice and she waited for the nurse to come by and see her drink it.
That's a funny and harmless one. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And so then she tells Lois about what's going on, and then she says, "Well, Ginger, you know what to do. I know it's going to be hard, but that's the right thing to do," which, once again, Lois being an amazing mom that she is, and Ginger knows that she's right, and she has to confront Dodie and saying, "Hey, I was the one who pulled off this prank." And so later that night, we have Dodie coming in, and the reason why is because she wants to pick up Hoodsey, and she doesn't realize that Hoodsey is still in the dump looking for the tonsils. And then Macy comes along and says, I'm coming in because my parents won't allow boys. And then Dustin is still following her. And we even see, Dustin coming in at least a second after Macy comes in. And then she has another amazing line, and she says, "Ginger, meet Dustin, the bane of my existence."
I was reeling from that line. I was like, that is so me. I hate how relatable that was. Remember Dustin? The bane of my existence. Oh, Macy is the best.
So basically, after the so we have Dodie, Macy, and Dustin. Basically, it just becomes an all-out war with Dodie saying, "Please, Dustin, I like you," and then Dustin's like, "Oh, Macy, we should be together," and then Macy's like, "Oh, stay away from me," and then Dodie, is telling Macy's like, "I knew you did this, Lightfoot. You were the one, you knew that I liked Dustin from 5 minutes before I told you that I liked him." And so they have this argument, they're fighting out in the backyard, and then, we have Lois concerned about where Carl and Hoodsey are, because she thought that Carl is over at Hoodsey's place, but they're not, and so she's going to go and call the cops. And so we have Carl and Hoodsey, they're stuck in Vile Valley, and they can't find themselves a way out until eventually they decide to kind of work together to climb out of Vile Valley, and they just so happen to find the jar of tonsils, like, nudged in between the garbage, and they use that to climb out of the ditch.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting little resolution there. I also think the animation in the landfill is really cool, like the cinematography specifically. They have this like rotating shot of Carl and Hoodsey as they're talking in the landfill. And I just think, I know it wasn't the longest running show ever, but they really, not that the beginning wasn't as strong, but animation-wise, I feel like the show improves a lot as it goes on. And so can we get to the twist at the end now? Are we there yet?
Yes, absolutely. Let's get to the twist.
I really didn't see it coming. I had no idea.
Yeah, so what Casey is referring to is that finally Ginger reveals that she was the one who left the fake love letter in Dodie's locker. And she looks really upset telling Dodie, Macy, Dustin, and Darren about this, and then they laugh at her, and they said April Fools because Darren ratted out on Ginger, and they forged the entire thing.
It's honestly, because I remember throughout this episode being like, oh, Dodie, come on, stop. Like, this is a new low, even for Dodie. She, like, tackles, what's his name, Dustin, at the end. Oh man, I was just reeling, thinking this is so much even for them, and then realizing that they're acting the whole time. That was great. And then Ginger, of course, turning it around one more time on them was cute.
Yeah, it was pretty cute with her saying, "Guys, I apologize to you. I trusted you. I thought you were my friends." And then they're like saying, "No, Ginger, we're sorry, we didn't mean to." And then she says, "April Fools." And then Darren's like, "Please, enough with the April Fools, you're going to give me a heart attack."
Yeah, I thought this was such a charming way to end the episode. It's really just, it shows that, like, especially when Ginger pretends to get upset, they're all ready to, like, leave it all behind and make it better, They're pretty good friends to each other, the whole group.
So I guess that should be the end of this episode. There's not really much to say. So let's give our ranking of yay, nay, or meh. I'm going to start it off. I was thinking about a meh because I thought that the first half was a little bit weak and kind of mean-spirited with Ginger forging the love letter. And of course, with Carl and Hoodsy's plot, it's okay, but definitely not as good as the ones that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. But then the second half, especially when they revealed the plot twist, was when it got really good. So I'm just going to probably leave it as a slight meh.
Yeah, for the same logic you just described, I've been going back and forth and back and forth. My gut reaction was that this was a great ending. I still feel that way. And it's an interesting concept for an episode. But yeah, Carl and Hoodsey and Blake's plot is, pretty run-of-the-mill, and it takes a while to get going. This one will also be a soft meh from me as well.
Yeah, so, I guess that should be the end of this episode. So yeah, it's crazy to know that we have finally reached episode 30, and we only need 30 more episodes to go until we're finished with the series. So I think looking back on all the first 30 episodes of the show, it's been a pretty good ride.
It really has been, and we'll of course have more time to reflect when we get to our Season 2 wrap-up in however many episodes. Would you say we're about halfway through Season 2?
Yeah, we only have 10 more episodes to go.
Okay, so in about 2.5 months-ish, we'll be getting back to that, and we'll be able to reflect a little bit more. All right, guys, well, thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're going to have our episode 30, as told by Ginger, episode 31, Ms. Foutley's Boys.